Like, I just start thinking, who are the winners and who are the losers here, right? Exactly how I was feeling in 2008. You see the iPhone, you've got Nokia, you've got Motorola, you've got BlackBerry, you've got, all this stuff. And you're like, somebody's winning and somebody's losing. I remember my mother didn't understand the concept of shorting, right? And 2009, I tell her to buy Apple and to short Nokia. And that was my, kind of canonical example for her, and it worked out okay. It actually went against her first, but then it worked out okay. Let's just talk about OEMs for a second. I think the consensus view in the world is that all these OEMs, so I'm talking the US OEMs, the Stellantis, the GMs, the Fords, the Europeans, the Volkswagens, the BMWs, the Mercedes, the Japanese, the Toyotas, etc., the Chinese, that FSD becomes a commodity and that they all end up with some version of it. Maybe there's one provider like NVIDIA or, Mobileye or somebody else who's providing this capability into these cars. And that, think of that as maybe like this Android version that they're all this box they're going to plug in their cars, and they're all going to go compete, as though they were before with Tesla. That's one version of the world. The other version of the world is that this is a tectonic disruption. That Tesla currently sells 2 million of the world's 80 million cars. But in the future, this isn't going to be about buying a car. This is going to be about a mode of transportation. And that Tesla could end up restructuring the entire industry, end up being tens of millions of cars. You may only have 2 or 3 or 4 global players, which, we have in a lot of other industries. And so the question I have for you is, what is your pattern recognition? Do you think that we're going to have all the same OEMs? They're all going to have some system. It's going to be basically commoditized. Or is this an extinction moment for some of these OEMs?
Such a hard question. I mean, there's so many different ways this could play out. One of the things that I question in my mind is who's going to own these vehicles. And so, on one hand, you have the Waymo situation where they own all the cars, but they also know what that means from a CapEx standpoint. And if you look at the subtleties of the kind of the statements they've made in conjunction with Uber, they're at least going to experiment with some models where maybe they don't have to pay for all the cars, or licensing their technology to the other OEMs that we talked about. And people I've heard Dara talk about at Uber talk about, maybe, large, debt companies get behind and own these things, like maybe the containers work in a rail yard, right? Like who owns these things? They move around, but someone owns them, right? People lease them. So that's a big question, and the Tesla argument is that they'll just be owned by the people that own the Tesla, which it's great from Tesla doesn't have the CapEx burden everybody else has because they've talked them into buying these cars. But which percentage of people are going to lease out their car every day? What would you guess? I have no idea what to put on that number. I mean, Airbnb does exist, so it's maybe not zero, but most of us still have our own house, right?